On this program, we continue our conversation with 4 Muslim Americans. They offer their reactions to the call to ban Muslims from coming into the United States, what's at the heart of Islam, and the value of community toward each other and to our country. This is America and the World. You know, when they say radical Islam, or somebody has been radicalized, I know in a lot of these other countries there's a great poverty and there's a lot of unemployment and young people who are drawn to these things. But really, I have to believe when you think of San Bernardino or New York or New Jersey or the nightclub in Florida and things like that, you just have to kind of say that these are very sick people. Yeah, and I'm not sure that radicalized anything gets to the heart of these are very sick people that would try to hurt other people. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
We hurt ourselves as a society by partitioning. Again, she mentioned the term KKK. All right, we don't refer to them as radicalized Christians, which they are Christians, and there are others, Timothy McVeigh and others, because in this society, being predominantly Christian, they're educated. They know that those quote-unquote radical behavior, those extremists, they don't represent the beauty of Christianity. But as she mentioned before, it was a poll that said 50% of the Americans don't know Muslims. You know, so it's an education piece. They don't know its beauty.
Only 50%?
50%.
That's 50%. Given us a lot of
whatever. Yeah, exactly.
And
but see, now you have to think about the 50% that do. What is that experience? Where do they get what they know from? That's the other piece. So we have a lot to do because we've been here for a long time. Muslims were here before America was even a country. Muslims have died on behalf of this country in every single war.
Were they here before?
Yeah, even before it was a country.
How does that happen?
Yes. They came here as slaves. Many came here as slaves.
Oh, yes.
Before. And then because we know America had great relationships with Muslim countries.
Yes.
So we can't look at Muslims as being something. I mean, it's 1.6 billion in the world.
Yeah.
If it was something that really if the religion radicalized, can we imagine what kind of turmoil we'll see around the world with that many people, with something that old, over 1,400 years old? We can imagine the turmoil if it was something that radicalized. It's not the religion that's doing it. Obviously, it's misguided people.
Have you at school? Have you? I know that you've had to be the ambassador for spreading goodwill about Islam, but how about anybody being insulting or discriminatory or prejudicial, or can you feel something?
I wouldn't say I have felt it in upper level education, going to college now, but definitely growing up post 9/11, living in Brooklyn. As a kid, I can remember time and time again, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, middle school, the words like terrorist, bomber, all these nasty terms being used against me or any of my Muslim friends. And that just became something that Yasmin was talking about. You just become desensitized to, you just try to ignore it and try to just go about your day.
But it has to hurt and it has to make you angry, huh?
Absolutely. It makes you angry, but at the same time, you just learn to swallow it up and just move on with your day. Just because if you try to talk back against them, a lot of the time those type of people aren't really receptive to learning or wanting to know more. And from my experience, this was also growing up as a young child, so I'd either get really mad, cry, or just ignore it.
But I kind of get the feeling talking with you, however, that you've got your feet on the ground, and you probably have been, come from a good family and have some solidity. I'm sure that there are many people. You have 4 kids yourself?
Yes, actually.
You're with kids all the time? Now, it's very interesting when you use the term Sunday school. And Sunday school to a Christian would mean, Sunday school. But when you use it in connection with the Muslim community,
Sunday school.
Yeah,
But
But how about all those kids and your own kids? Have they?
But what was at the heart of your Christian Sunday school? I mean, it was ethics, right? Morality, teaching children to remember God, so that you could look at all people like God's children, and that you learn those ethics and morality so that you could be good human beings. Not so much about being a Muslim or or you having your Christian Sunday school versus my Muslim Sunday school. It's about schooling ethics, teaching children about being good people.
I'm going to hold for a second here and just say to the folks at home, if you're just joining our conversation, first of all, we want you all to go to our website, thisisamerica.net, and see the first half hour of our conversation. We're in a second half hour of a conversation with four just wonderful American people learning about Islam and some of the prejudices and discriminations that some of us may hold, and just learning a little bit about how to accept each other just as human beings. Huh? What makes you angry? What makes you really angry in this whole business of Islam and being Muslim but being American at the same time, and stereotypes and misconceptions? What do you want us to know? What do you want us to take away? Huh?
What makes me angry, I would say, is when I see another unfortunate attack of some sort and the person happens to be of a Muslim background. It's really sad, but I think a lot of Muslims or Arabs or other ethnic groups can relate to sort of crossing your fingers when you hear that there's some sort of attack and just hoping to God that they're not Muslim. And it's obviously being upset and sad about what has happened, but also understanding what that means to you and to your community. I'm tired. I'm tired of like having to see these things on TV. As a country, you know, we don't want to be going through this in any way. But I'm also tired on another level as a Muslim, having my religion, you know, demonized on a regular basis. Just like the Imam had mentioned earlier, when you hear Islamic radicalization, it's sort of like an oxymoron because Islam is such a peaceful religion. It's not that we're innocent in any way, or that there isn't, you know, flaws within the community, or that there aren't bad people. They exist just like they exist in any community. But the religion teaches, you know, community. It teaches unity. It teaches giving back. There's not the sense of, you know, this terror and horror that you're seeing, throughout the world, unfortunately, in some cases. And so, that's what I'm tired of.
What are you tired of, Imam? What are you angry about?
What I'm angry about, I mean,
Yes,
that as
please.
well, but it disappoints me when we find leaders in the country not challenged, knowing America's great history, how Muslims have been a part of this fabric for so long, the relationship that this country has had with Morocco and Tunisia and others. In fact, Muslims had to protect our most precious cargo, people and resources. And then to look at a leader not doing what President Bush did when 9/11 happened. He went to a mosque immediately, and he said, that is not the true face of Islam. That's the president now. And he got support in the society for the most part. We've had more spikes in anti-Muslim sentiments and attacks in the last year than since 9/11. That tells us that there's not enough speaking out. They're being too quiet and too silent, and they're allowing their citizens who vote for these people and put them in office, they're allowing their citizens and their country to be divided. I was in the military when 9/11 happened. I was in an operation that involved foreign nationals who are now American citizens, and we had a very serious mission. They began to be, when we talk about this demonized picture, some of those individuals who are now on our team from the Arab world were helping us fight the enemy. But certain Americans, young Americans, began to make disparaging comments about them, ragheads, etc., telling them to get out, go home. Production began to go down because they were made to feel uncomfortable now in the environment. And that hurt the mission. The commander came to me and asked me to do something about it because I was very active as a Muslim. And one of the things I did was I said, we got to educate the people. And I pulled about 40 points, powerful points in terms of what Muslims have been doing in America, and particularly, specifically dealing with defending and protecting and putting their life on the line. And I reduced that to about 27 points. And the first thing on my list, just to get an idea how that list went, the very first thing at the top of my list was, during that time, the commander-in-chief of the military, I started with that, his #1 doctor was a Muslim. Our commander-in-chief, his life was entrusted to a Muslim. You see, and you can imagine how the rest of the list went from there, from the top on down, in terms of how Muslims are so engaged in helping and protecting and defending this life. So we should have more of our leaders. It bothers me when they let that go, statements go about the citizens here, when they say something about Muslims, broad brush it. And I do like the fact that the president doesn't like to attach Islam with
Yes.
the terrorism,
Right.
because
Good
that's
for
not
him,
the religion
yeah.
doesn't produce that.
This is America and the World is brought to you by the National Education Association, the U.S.-China Education Trust, and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The League of Arab States, representing 350 million people in 22 member countries. The Petroleum Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas, exploration and production, energy, and infrastructure. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. And Ventana Productions, television facilities, editing, and distribution services. Mona, how about pick up the thread?
Well, actually, you know what? I wanted to kind of flip your question and say you were asking what makes them angry, but I think that there's also a flip side to that question and say what is the good that could potentially come? At the end of the day, this is the predicament that we're in. And I think that it requires that our children learn deeply what is Islam. You know, in a different way that I felt like when I was growing up, I was kind of allowed to slip under the rug. You know, there was questions that I had, but I kind of just went along for the ride, and it wasn't really until college that I started to really question, why do we do this, and why are we doing that? But now I feel as though from a young age the children are being questioned, and those questions are challenging, but it's also creating an enlightenment, I think, in the Muslims that are practicing, that then they also have to then rise up within themselves and become these ambassadors, as he said, you know, that suddenly they have to actually live, okay, if I want to wear a headscarf, what kind of behavior do I need to show the world that if this is the thing that they're showing on TV, how can I prove that that's actually not the case? How can I show from my example of a human being the quality of what a Muslim is?
Does that make you have to be better than? Because we've heard that before.
Yeah, no, I absolutely don't think so.
But
I think
don't
it
mean
makes
better
it
than,
better than yourself. I think everybody's always trying to improve their own being, right? So trying to be more patient, trying to be more understanding, trying to connect better with other human beings. I think as long as your struggle is an internal struggle, then you're always working towards the betterment of your own self.
But there is that pressure sometimes that you sort of have to always be on your best
Yeah,
behavior,
yeah,
right?
that's
Like
a lot
that,
of-
because you are representing at the end of the day, whether you want to or not. You know, whether it's that you're visibly representing or your name gives it off, or, you know, your neighbors know that you're Muslim. So you always, you know, there is this sense where you have to feel like, or some people do feel, I shouldn't say everyone, but some people do feel like they have to be on their best behavior because they're scared.
You did a very interesting thing there. When you talked about, and your neighbors know you're Muslim.
Yeah.
You did kind of a little, almost like a little ducking kind of thing.
Yeah, because you do.
Yes.
I mean, there are. When I was in Florida, because I grew up in South Florida, there was a time where there was this anti-Muslim group that basically was mailing people DVDs about how, you know, you should be careful about your Muslim neighbor and how terrorists are growing in this country and there are sleeper cells all around us. And so you become fearful of leaving your house, and you think to yourself, oh my God, my neighbor probably thinks that, like, when I have friends over that we're planning something or that we're doing something.
Oh my God, you're back there making bombs or something
along
like that.
along those lines.
Oh
so,
my God,
So
I
mean,
never thought of
I
that.
remember, you know, when we would move to a new house, we would make a conscious effort to knock on our neighbors' doors and try to introduce them, you know,
Say,
to
"Hi, I'm
I'm
nice.
so and so,
I'm nice.
I'm your neighbor, I just
I'm
moved
nice."
in. You know, you feel like you almost have to do that. Like, hi, I'm not, you know, don't worry about me.
I want to go back. I want you to jump in, and you have a thought. And I want to ask you a follow-up question. Go ahead.
No,
whatever you have.
So I was definitely going to say I agree that it does give us, as Muslim Americans, more of a chance to learn more about who we are identity-wise, but it does give us more pressure to be that ambassador that we were talking about earlier. And I don't think that's a pressure that everyone wants to have. And So I think that it's more up to fixing our education system and making sure that people all across the nation are aware of what Islam is and what basic other religions are, so that they can understand and just know that they're also just people as well with just a different belief
But
set.
you know what I just thought of when you were talking about that? I was thinking of being on television, and you're out and about, and some people recognize you. So if you're there, then if something goes wrong at CVS or in the bank, I mean, you can't get angry because somebody may know who you are, and then all of a sudden you end up in the Washington Post in the columns. Not so much nowadays as before, but I would think there's a lot of pressure sometimes not to be yourself because of an example, especially if you're covered, to show the world that we're okay.
If I could, count the amount of times I've had, people come up to me and ask me about Islam, or, ask me why I wear the scarf. I mean, they're positive encounters, right? I hope you don't mind. Can I ask you, why do you wear that? Or I've had people who've come up to me and be like, I'm really sorry. I hope, I'm sorry that your community is going through this. Or I've had the negative experiences where a gentleman will say, you're really brave wearing that here. And I'm like, oh, thanks. What does that mean?
Wow.
And but I go back to that point. For me personally, the good outweighs the bad. I feel like the opportunities, maybe for me with wearing the hijab, the scarf, it's brought an opportunity for people to come and feel comfortable enough to come and speak to me and ask me questions, and I appreciate that. I'd rather someone ask me than assume. Yeah, because we're friendly, so we'll talk back. We'll engage in conversation.
But I want to make two points too.
One
of the points she made earlier, this even for Sunday school, but for mosques, there's another study that was done earlier this year that showed that the more you go to the mosque, the more you embrace your identity, and the more you engage in serving this society. And it's showing that Muslims are the most community service oriented of Protestants, Jews, Catholics. Those were the ones they were polled against. Then those religious groups, Muslims were more involved in society. And it's showing that going to the mosque doesn't radicalize, but makes you more contributing to society. Because again, we talked about what the religion teaches. And it tells us really that the people who are involved in extremism, the ones that you've even mentioned, they don't know the religion. Most of them are uneducated, they don't know the religion.
And a lot of the times they're getting the information off the net.
Getting information off the net, but they're not attending mosques. But again, you got to understand the population of Muslims in America are among the most educated Muslims in the world. We put that up against the literacy rate of the other nations where they come from, and look at what's in America. They're the most educated. And so our mosques are producing sound, healthy American citizens who happen to be Muslims.
How about discrimination, prejudice, Muslim vis-a-vis African American?
Well, about the pressure, for instance, you mentioned that. African Americans felt that they had to perform more.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
because of the bigotry and discrimination.
Yeah.
So really, there is an element of that with Muslims too, and our children. Some of the pressure. I hear from my members many times about what their children are going through because of the pressure and the need to. My son he's an officer in the Army, and he's good at what he does. But there is pressure on him because, again, you got to understand some of those who are coming from those areas where they're fighting. Some of them have stigmatized anybody that wears a label as being disloyal, so he has had some problems. Although he's been able to overcome all of that because of his characters, it's very stellar. I have 2 daughters who Air Force. I have 2 sons, Marines. So they have had challenges because again, if the leaders don't stand up, if the education is not taking place in terms of who Muslims are, this is a significant part of our society. Now, all of our presidents since have said, since 9/11, they've actually said that Islam is the fastest growing religion in my country. This is what they said when they went abroad, in my country. So we should know. I'll give you this piece and then I'll move on. We were threatened to be attacked. The nation's mosque was threatened to be attacked earlier this year by some white supremacist group, armed protests. Our community. I was leading the delegation in Turkey. So it was a concern, but the community wanted to know how should we respond. We have all these relationships with interfaith organizations, and they wanted to come and stand with us and let them see that we are a community united. My instructions were, I appreciated it, but I don't want us to do anything in response to what they said. I don't want to give them any attention. I want us to keep awareness of, but let's do what's normal. But what happened was this, Dennis. The neighbors had gotten together, which we didn't know this. And then they came out, they heard, this was publicized about this group coming in. They went out and put signs up on trees and poles saying, this is a hate-free zone. We stand with Messenger Muhammad, our neighbors.
That's awesome.
Whoa.
And that was text to me. And I really felt very comfortable.
I'm sure.
And I later found out that the neighbors, Washington posted a story on it, so I was later glad to hear that the neighbors had also agreed that if that group had gotten out, and 2 carloads were observed, but they never stopped. They said if they had gotten out and wanted to do this protest, that the neighbors were going to form a human chain themselves, and we had to do nothing.
Wow.
That's how we're supposed to be for each other as neighbors.
I want to circle back to what Infathur has put on the table way at the beginning of our conversation, where you mentioned media and media's portrayal. And we've got about 3 minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about how the media has presented Islam, but let's spin it in another direction, how we can present it in a more positive, enlightening way.
I think it goes back to what we were saying before. A lot of our mosques give root to a lot of great individuals who give back to our community, who are social activists, who are a part of the struggles in other communities and work to further their movements. So the media has all the opportunity to concentrate on that as well. We have a lot of people serving, we have people serving in office as well, congressmen, people in State Department. The media can concentrate on their contributions as well, but that hasn't been a route that they've taken. Yeah. Instead, it's been about ISIS or about the mass shootings that just so happened that the individual who was the shooter was a Muslim.
There's an obvious bias.
A bias?
Yeah. The bias is to cover the stuff that's sensational, that will bring the viewership, that will, sort of rally the emotions in a way. And when there are these Muslims who are coming out and speaking out against it, they're not covered. No one comes to really cover the story. And then the number one thing I always hear is Muslims aren't saying, they're not, denouncing it enough. And it's like, we've denounced every single attack, every single thing that's happened, and we don't even identify or connect ourselves with these individuals in any way. They don't represent me. They don't represent my religion. People. Exactly. Yes. And so it's very frustrating that you denounce and you denounce and you denounce, that you reach a point where you're like, I'm not going to denounce anymore because that person doesn't represent me. I'm not that person. I have nothing to do with them. I didn't take the decision they took. And they don't represent my religion or my community, so I'm over
Mona, what
it.
do you want us to take from just about a minute, and I want to get Imam to have the last word. What should we take away from our conversation?
Well, I was just wanted to say that that reminds me of a challenge that we actually have with our children, is that as we teach them about Islam, which is these values that we've been discussing throughout this conversation, we have this difficulty on whether to talk to them about the things that they see in the media. Yes. And it's like suddenly bringing this awareness to them of what's happening in the bigger world that children cannot understand. Yeah. But then at the same time, they go to public school and they're connected with that person suddenly. And so it's so important. What I would really love is that within public school settings, that the teachers, and I'm not talking about Muslims, I'm talking about the teachers create the zone for inclusion, and those things be covered in the media.
Imam, you got about 15 seconds.
Yeah, I just want to say that Muslims, that's our identity. We're Muslim and we're American. And we look like any other American, really, in our actions and our behavior. We're doctors, we're lawyers, we're neighbors, we're friends, we're that mother at the ball game. All these things, we help out with the homeless. We're in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, in the military, as we mentioned, police officers, all of these things. And again, you probably don't know us because we're not out there saying, I'm a Muslim, I'm in the uniform. No, we're just being American, because that's important for our unity.
I am thrilled that Jake has put together the four of you. I mean, I can't think of a better group to educate me and to educate our viewers in the United States and around the world about such a very, very important topic, subject, and thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. For information about This Is America and the World, and to watch all of our programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and look for us on Facebook and Twitter. This Is America and the World is brought to you by the National Education Association, the U.S.-China Education Trust, and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The League of Arab States, representing 350 million people in 22 member countries. The Petrolin Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas, exploration and production, energy, and infrastructure. The Rotendaro Family Trust. The Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. And Ventana Productions, television facilities, editing, and distribution services.